But our loved ones, our friends, those who are horribly and tragically taken, they don't really die. It's just life has changed. They go into another life, a better life. I mean, how is that not just like, woohoo, celebration, goodness? This is why we take the time to also celebrate all saints. To remember that the people that we have loved, that we still love, have life. I mean, we cannot forget that that is the greatest news in the gospel that we share, that uniquely Christians have been entrusted with to share. That in the times like our country has been experiencing, especially in the morning of the synagogue shooting, okay, that we can really still proclaim a hope and a new life. The world needs to know that. And it's uniquely through Jesus Christ. So today, as we celebrate All Saints, we are celebrating life. We're not celebrating, quote unquote, those who have died. We're celebrating life. We're celebrating the lives of those who still live in the great cloud of witnesses that the book of Hebrews talks about, that continually surrounds us, that we just in the spiritual world we just don't see, but that they're there. Oftentimes, it's been said when we celebrate Holy Communion and we come into kind of those holy mysteries of offering up Jesus' sacrifice for us once for all time, that here the great cloud of witnesses comes ahead looking at the sacrament, and the great cloud of witnesses of the spiritual world, or you will, complete the circle from behind. And so, together with angels and archangels and with all the company of heaven, we laud and magnify and we lift up Jesus and his sacrifice, casting down our crowns and declaring, holy, holy, holy is the Lord. I mean, these are the things that just blow my mind, but they're the things that we get the chance to step into every time that we celebrate Eucharist, every time that we gather, every time that we really allow ourselves to go into those depths of our spirituality that so oftentimes we don't, because we just kind of stay up here on the shallows. And so today's just one of those days where it's important to remember and go deeper. And so for that, we open up the floor for your stories, for your faith inspirations. Those people, again, whether it be historically or whether it be those who just personally you have known, who are a part of that great cloud of witnesses now. So a couple of things, a couple of ground rules first, just like our normal Testimony Sunday. Again, you only get 2 to 3 minutes. I'm sorry. I know you have a lot of memories to share, I'm sure, about that special loved one, okay? But you only get about 2 to 3 minutes, so give everybody a chance to share who wants to, okay? If you have a picture of them, awesome. If you don't and you still want to share, that's okay, okay? Just please keep it focused to specifically who they are, not who they were, who they are, because they're alive, okay? And then specifically, how did they inspire you in your faith? Okay, we're specifically talking about our faith journey, how they influenced your faith, okay? What was it about them that helped you to grow or to take inspiration from what they did in the Lord to offer your walk in the Lord? Make sense? Okay? That's about it, really. Pretty simple.
Good morning. Yeah, you'll probably have to see me afterwards to see the picture, but this is my dear friend Michelle. And I had to think really hard because there have been a lot of people who said in my life who I would consider saints, a lot of them who are sitting in this room right now. But she was the first one. And when she met me, when I was growing up, I wasn't a Christian. I didn't grow up in that type of household. You know, if you ask me what my religion was, I'd say, well, my mom's a Lutheran, but I've never been to a Lutheran church. My dad, I think his religion is golf, because you'll find him on a course every Sunday. But I don't really know what mine is, per se. And anyway, so she started asking me to go to church with her. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't know how to pray. I don't know how to do any of that. So I don't know. So she said, well, you know, we got this other thing. And she started trying to convince me to go to this other little meeting on Fridays. And I'm like, well, I don't know. And she's like, they have food. I'm like, what? She's like, they have bacon? I'm like, whoa, stop there. So I tell people nowadays that bacon was instrumental instrumental in bringing me to Christ, just so you know. It's a very special place in my heart. But anyway, so she said, yeah, you can go to this thing, and people will pray, and you'll have breakfast and whatnot. And I'm like, well, they don't expect me to pray right away, do they? You know, they don't expect me to do that. She's like, no, you can just sit there, hold hands, listen to people pray, no pressure. And so this was what was called our breakfast club. So I would go to breakfast club, and that's how I started learning how to pray and meeting other Christians and getting in, eventually saying, you know, I think I do want to go to church. And her family would pick me up and take me to church and drop me off and come back and pick me up so we could go to youth group that evening. For 3 years, they did that for me. So the thing is, what I want to say to conclude is, you never know when you invite somebody to church what a difference you can make in their lives. So please do it. Amen.
I was asked by my lovely wife, Renee, who I think you all know, to share. She didn't want to come up here and read this, but I'm supposed to read it and show it. Okay? I love the Jesus in everyone I see, so everyone is a saint to me.
That's sweet.
And what I wanted to share with you was a living, what I call a living saint today, and that is, how many of you would know Kenneth Hagin? He's dead, okay? But he influenced a man named Andrew Womack. How many of you know Andrew Womack? Andrew Womack has an ongoing ministry now for 50 years. And this is one of his teaching guides. He's on television here through CTN twice a day, about 6 a.m. in the morning and 9:30 at night, Channel 22. And then he's on all of the other Christian networks at different times. And he has been a great influence in my life. And this is one of his probably, 30 to 50 teaching guides. And this can be used to minister to you on an individual basis and go through this as quickly as you want. This little CD, DVD can be downloaded if you want to teach it to a Sunday school group. I'm currently going through one that's Spirit, Soul, and Body. I don't know if any of you have gone through that one, but that was kind of his primary start when he started his TV series in January of 2000. I'm sorry, it was in the middle of the year 2000, I think. And so all of this material is available on his website. It's simply AWMI, Andrew Womack Ministries. You just pull it up and you can see all of this. He has all over the world Charis Bible colleges where you can go and sit under his teaching directly from people that have been trained in Charis Bible College. He's out of Colorado Springs. It's not Colorado, it's Woodland, Colorado now. Yeah. And I just encourage all of you, if you want to go deeper into the Word, that this is an excellent way to do it. Each one of these things, he has a little booklet too. He just finished this God Wants You Well about a month ago, 6 weeks ago. I plan to go through this. I ordered this. I'm doing an ongoing in the 7th week of the Body, Soul, and Spirit. And I just encourage you, if you want to know about the Word, you're going to learn about the Word. You can't help it if you get into this. You go at your own speed, or you can go with a group.
Awesome. Thank you, Ron, so much. Thanks. I'm making notes. Who would like to come next? I think think Karen's right here, and then you can go next.
Okay, so I went the more traditional route. And I guess the saint most affecting my life would be St. Patrick, because, as many of you know, I'm Irish. But the real reason is because my grandfather, he was, I'm going to say a devout Catholic, and he was really upset with my parents when he found out that we weren't going to church. And so he was the first one that kind of influenced my parents to, actually make us go to church. And that's what it was in the beginning, And so he also, then my dad is named Patrick, my brother is Patrick, my nephew is Patrick. So we have all those. But I just think of my grandfather, who is hopefully also in saintdom, as one who influenced our family, and then raised Catholic. And from there, God grabbed a hold of me, and shook me up a lot, and got me here.
Awesome.
I don't know if all can see it, but this is Catherine Coleman. A lot of people do know her, and I am a student of Andrew Womack. But Catherine Coleman is what had me go ahead and not only want to be, but follow along as an evangelist. And I was made fun of. My family, we'd have family dinners, and when I would go to attend, they would stand up and bow down as I came into the room and said, "Oh, she's arrived." So this is who I think has changed millions and millions of lives, Catherine Coleman. And there's a new difference in the stage of age. At 80, you start going towards 18.
Here also. But what I got from both of them was a strong beginning, and that I also had the right to choose, which I thought was very unusual in those days, to be that liberal. And when they saw I wasn't being attentive, they told me, it isn't about religion, it's about your relationship with the Lord. Go where you are not going to be a hypocrite, where you're going to listen and learn and always have your faith and hope, because we need that in our life. And I think they were both saints in the way that they stood up and said that for me. Because if I wouldn't have done that, I would not have found you and many other churches that I have learned to study the Bible and be directed back to the Lord every time. And though I may not become a member of any church, my heart is with the Lord. And I owe that to them, and also because my mother truly is a saint. I am sure way back then they didn't know I had dyslexia. I don't know if that's what I have today. But that poor woman pulled her hair out with me over every subject that I had and encouraged me. And I didn't realize how much until she had passed 30-some years ago, and I saw cards that I had written on my mother. Thank you so much for helping me. Thank you so much for not pulling out your hair. Thank you for staying by me. Thank you for helping me. I wouldn't have made it this far. And it's always been a challenge for me to learn. But because of that beginning, of knowing that I can have that hope, I found peace with who I am and who I can be with others.
Thank you. Your mother. What's your mom's name?
Elsie.
Elsie.
My dad's name was Ray.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing this.
My mother and dad had a great influence on me and taught me about prayer. And I can look back at my family and think that in each one of my brothers and sisters' lives, there was a serious event that if it hadn't been for the prayers of my mother and dad, it would not, the outcome, it would have been death. And so I wanted to share just one incident. My mother had went with my one of my sisters to Cleveland to visit her sister, and when they were there, my sister had gone downstairs and had left my mother to watch her son, which was about 3 years old, and they were on the 3rd story. And she said as she went down the stairs, she saw her son's shirt, past the window, in the stairway. And when she got down there, he was on the ground in cinders, and there was a lot of people. And when they realized that she was his mother, they wouldn't let her near them, and they held her back. And the guys began to work with him and try to get him CPR. And she said she stood back and said, one was telling the other one, well, he's dead. He's dead. You might as well stop. And so they decided to carry him inside and up to, in this room. He was, my mother found out that what happened and went down where they were at. And they were still, the one guy looked at the other one and said, are you trying to scare this mother to death? Because, that he was, pronouncing him dead. They called the ambulance, and there was just a crowd collecting around. So my mother stepped forward and she said, is there anybody here that is a believer that will pray with me? And finally, they just kind of dropped their head, and this black man stepped forward and he said, well, I'm not a believer, but I believe in prayer. And they began to pray. The ambulance came. My nephew got in the ambulance. They put him in the ambulance. And my sister at the time, Virginia, was not a believer. She said that she could see this light just follow the ambulance, and she said it was just really bright. They took him into the room, and of course then they let her come in with them, and they were looking him over, and he wasn't moving, and all of a sudden he coughed and raised up and hollered, Mom, Mommy. And they looked him over. He had he was bruised from head to toe. He had a few cinder marks and scrapes. He didn't even have a broken bone. And he's in his 60s today, serving the Lord.
So your mom also is inspirational in helping you not only with faith, but the belief
Power
and
of
power
prayer.
of prayer.
Okay, well, we'll just do it this way.
For 7 years, when I came to Florida, first 7 years, I worked for the Tournament Players Club. You probably golf club. I applied for a job in their accounting department. At that time, the relationship between the members and the management was strained because the members felt that their problems were not being addressed, and so they were disgruntled. The general manager called me and said, you're not going to work in accounting. I want you to be a settler of disputes between the club members and the club. In other words, a peacemaker. And he gave me this title, a German word, a nice German word, ombudsman. You will be my ombudsman, settling disputes. My favorite saint is St. Francis of Assisi. And you're probably familiar with these words from a song that talks about his life. Make me a channel of your peace. I will attempt to humbly
us who maybe don't know the words or aren't familiar with that, could we read those? The words to the song, for those who maybe aren't familiar with the words to the song. Could we read those?
I'm sorry about that.
I think it's in there.
I shouldn't take it for granted because I know it, that everybody knows it. Okay, here we go. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring your love. Where there's injury, your pardon, Lord. And where there's doubt, true faith in you. O Master, grant that I may never seek so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love with all my soul.
Amen. Thank you. St. Francis of Assisi, certainly an inspiration for billions of people throughout the generations. A humble Christian back in the late 12th century, 13th century of Italy. The last person that I'm going to speak on, also, believe it or not, is St. Patrick. That's the one that I chose also. I chose this particular picture of Patrick instead of the kind of traditional bishop-looking one with snakes in front of him and stuff like that. Because to me, this represents more Patrick. Patrick, in his life, inspires me because he chose to love and actually serve amongst those who persecuted him. In his story as a child, he was kidnapped from Britain and he was taken to Ireland. He himself is not Irish, actually. He's British. But he was kidnapped by raiders, by pirates from Ireland and taken to there where he lived a number of years as a child. But then was able to steal away on a ship one night and go back to Britain. And there in Britain, as he was studying to go into ordained ministry, he had a call that he felt like from the Lord to go back to the people that once were his enemies. And so he did. He went back to Ireland as a missionary to serve amongst the people who had kidnapped him, who had stolen so much of his childhood. And he served as one who did not simply say, hey, I have a better way, and you better come and follow Jesus and give up your pagan rituals, you evil druids. Instead, he walked amongst them with love, getting to know them very relationally, being a friend, being a servant, setting up little communities of faith that would kind of live next to the druids. And just through relational evangelism, as we call it today, started to open up friendships and relationships that would allow these druids to come and learn and ask questions and explore the faith, kind of like Michelle did with you. Maybe he had bacon, I don't know. But he used the power of community. He used the power of fellowship. He used the power also of just what the druids themselves knew in their own language, which was creation. Patrick knew the Druids' love affair and the Celts' love affair with nature, wind, water, and sun, and the plants, and he spoke of a God who was the creator of all of this, and 3 leaves in one. And through using the power of the language the Druids already knew, was able to point them to God. So he didn't have to invent a new language. He just took what God had already given to them in creation and used it to point the way to the true Lord. And so that example of Patrick inspires me. And in this particular picture, I know it's kind of hard to see, it's just kind of him walking through a countryside. There's pigs in the background, very rural agrarian society there at that time, and still to this day. And there are some children who have kind of come up along the path as Patrick is walking along, and he's taking the time to talk with them and just share and love them. And so that is something that really I find great heart in, and I think in today's culture as well, we can learn from Patrick's example to take what's already out there in the culture and use it as a way to point to what God has already planted in the hearts of many as far as his truth. And to do so lovingly, relationally, invitingly, and use the power of community, use the power of fellowship in oftentimes a lonely world. My middle name is Patrick. Not because I am Irish. The story behind that is my family on my mom's side is Italian. But they figured I probably wouldn't like the name Pasquale. So, so they said Patrick. Not because they had an Irish background at the time that they knew. But as we have later now discovered since my grandfather's passing, we learned that my grandfather was adopted. And we learned his real name and background. Guess where it goes back to? God knew. So that's the story of Patrick a little bit in history. I commend to you, there are so many amazing stories in history. And certainly there are contemporary saints as well. But I too would commend to you, don't throw away the pages of centuries past and what has already been learned and what we stand on today as a church that continues to grow on the shoulders of the saints before it. Amen. Amen. Let us pray. Lord, we thank you so much for the amazing lives of these people that we have talked about and shared. Lord, of those that some are even only known to you. And God, we know that one day we will have all eternity to hear their stories and to share ours. We certainly do, Lord, give thanks for their inspiration and, God, their witness. And God, it's our heart's desire that, Lord, we would be a witness in our own day and age. That, God, we would take the times that have been given to us, and that, God, we would use those times, whatever they are, to faithfully run our leg of the race. So that whatever generations come after, Lord, they too might look back at our lives and say, yeah, I take heart from him. I take heart from her. I take heart from them. Thank you that we are truly mystically knit together in a greater fellowship than what we could possibly understand. How John described in Revelation a multitude of people that was countless from every tribe, tongue, and nation. That God, as they already are there gathered in worship, so too, Lord, will be one day. We bless you, O God. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Father. Thank you, Holy Spirit. Make us a channel of your peace. Help us not so much to be loved, but to love. May we too, Lord God, seek not as much to be consoled, but to console. And God, wherever we are, may we always shine your light to the glory of your name.